Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Jim, and happy Labor Day.
Ross, CMHC has launched the first-time home buyer incentive just in time for fall home purchases. A listener was asking your opinion on the final policy that was released. Is this really a good deal for first-time home buyers?
You know, Jim, we've touched on this on the show a couple of times, so I'm not surprised to see this question coming back up again. You know, we're sitting here and we're looking at the numbers, and we're looking at the lunacy of this program and the level of ignorance or incompetence or corruption that has taken place to allow this to be put in place with young Canadian families. When you're looking at this program, folks, you have to look at it from the perspective of the cost. What is this program going to cost me? And there is some assumption that this program is going to allow you to have a lower cost to own a home because the government is going to pay part of your down payment for you. They're not really paying part of their down payment for you. What they're actually doing is they're becoming co-owners of your home. They're basically a silent partner. A partner who's not going to tell you when to sell, a partner who's not going to tell you when to move, a partner who's not going to tell you what to do with your mortgage, a partner who's not going to tell you what to do with your renovations and on the home over the years. It's really a totally silent partner who, up to 5 years later, is going to reach into your pocket and pull out a stack of cash that equals, it's estimated to equal, based on historical real estate trading data, $3 for every $1 they lent you over those 25 years. That means if you borrowed, or they were your silent partners for $10,000, they invested $10,000 in your home, they're expecting that you're going to be writing them a check for $30,000, 3 times the amount, 25 years from now. Now, if you're in certain parts of the country, say Vancouver, you could be writing a check for $50,000, 5 times what they lent you as a silent partner to start out in the process. If you look at the cost of that money, so if you look at what you're going to have to repay, so forget the $10,000 because that's their shared equity share. That's the government's partnering with you to buy your home. This is Jim, in my personal opinion, this is the beginning of socialism entering our country, where the single most used wealth developing tool in this country, the family home, is now being seen as the government being your partner as a silent owner. This is irresponsible for our government to ever allow this. I'm even more upset about the other party not explaining what's going on and running on this in this election. The government, by becoming your partner, is effectively asking you to pay a much higher expense to own your home over the 25 years that you own it. they are effectively returning the interest rate that you'll pay, because if it's a $10,000 loan they give you, and you're purchasing a brand new home, that means technically it could be 10% of the value. The government will be a partner 10% of the value of $100,000. So that extra $20,000 that you're going to have to repay, 30 minus the 10, leaves $20,000 you're going to have to pay in a cost 25 years from now, is an added interest expense on your mortgage. And if you went with 5% down, so you had 5% down, government has 10% down, that's $15,000. You take out a $100,000 mortgage just for the sake of making the math easy. That $100,000 mortgage is going to have technically an extra $20,000 of expense attached to it. Well, Ross, my house is going to go up in value, so it's going to offset that. That's true, but it's also going to be money that's gone. It's lost. It's money that you've never owned. What the government is doing is if you put 5% down and they put 10% down, in other words, you buy a new pre-sale condo, or you buy a new pre-sale single-detached in Calgary, or you buy a new pre-sale single-detached in southwestern Ontario, or you buy a new condo in Toronto, or you buy a pre-sale condo in Vancouver. The government is saying, we are going to take any profit that you made even before you close in the property. Then we're going to let you work on the house, pay down the mortgage. We're going to let you do upgrades to the property, but we're going to be quiet about those because as you upgrade a property, you should be expecting it to sell for even a higher value. After all, who puts in a $5,000 deck in their backyard, not expecting when they go to sell the house 1 or 2 years later, that deck is going to increase the value of their property? I encourage every listener to Google renovations that pay for themselves. Go ahead and Google it, or money-making renovations. Go ahead and Google it. What the government is saying is, we get the benefit of all those extra expenses, renovations, maintenance, improvements you make to the property. We get 1/10 of a share of all those. We don't have to pay a single penny over the next 25 years, but you're going to repay it to us. This is the single greatest wealth extraction from a Canadian family ever launched since income tax was first announced by our nation. This is the single biggest scam ever perpetuated on young home buyers. What I would encourage all of your listeners to is, if you can buy, you need to have the 5% down minimum anyways. Simply don't spend the extra 10% they're asking. Because across this nation, housing prices have dropped 10% over the last year or more. Everywhere from Vancouver to Calgary to Toronto, except in Montreal, prices have dropped. There is no need for you to sign off now that prices have dropped. Do you think the government would have instituted this in the spring of 2016 in British Columbia? Not in a million years. They waited till this fall of 2019 to launch it, after all of the house price declines have taken place. They're still taking place more, but the biggest portion has already been knocked off. In Toronto, do you think they brought this policy in the spring of 2017? No. They brought it in the fall of 2019. Again, after a great amount of housing prices have dropped. They didn't bring this in Calgary in 2013. They waited till the Calgarians have lost historic wealth reduction, and now they're bringing it in 2019. probably about the time where the Calgary market is going to be stable for a little while. And do we really think the government politicians are this stupid that this is by luck? That CMHC, with their thousands and thousands of staff members, with their hundreds of billions of dollars of government-backed funding, do not know exactly what they're doing? Because that's what they're asking us to believe. They're asking us to believe that they are stupider than the Canadian public, instead of the Canadian public trusting that this offer they're being given is the right one. It is the worst one. It is a wealth destroyer. Only in certain parts of this country, over certain periods of time, for certain families, does it make any sense to use this. I'll tell you, if they had offered this in Vancouver in March of 2016, or Toronto in April of 2017, or in Calgary in June of 2013, I would have told all of the listeners to grab it. Because then what I would tell you to do is to set up so you could repay it after the prices of your home has dropped. Because that $10,000 they lent you, if you've had a 30% correction on your house price, you only have to pay them $7,000 back. You get an instantaneous 30% return. You save that, offsetting some of your house price decline. But they didn't do that, did they? No. They waited till the declines happened, and then magically they came up with this policy. I don't believe government and politicians are this stupid. I'm using this word. I do not believe they are this ignorant. I do not believe that thousands of staff members at CMHC across this country are this ignorant to what they're doing. I believe they know full well, and I also believe in my heart that this is the first truly socialist decision I have seen taking place in this country. Because this decision, where the government is a silent partner in your homeownership wealth, is unfathomable. I don't care where they got the idea from. I don't care what economists came up with the idea. I don't care what they're doing. I understand what they're doing. They're trying to buy your votes. They're trying to tell you, we'll give you something in exchange for your vote. What they never tell you is their other hand's reaching into your back pocket, and it's pulling out $3 for every one they put in. And if you live in Vancouver and probably Toronto, they're pulling out $5.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ross Kay. Ross, Calgary's the first real estate board in Canada to release their August sales, and they stated sales activity increased in their news release. Last month you warned us about this, so why are you correct and what really happened?
Okay, so across Canada, okay, you're going to be hearing stories over the next week to 10 days. And then you're going to hear them again when the Canadian Real Estate Association announces their sales stats around the middle of the month. You're also going to hear it again from the Terranet National Bank House Price Index numbers. You're going to hear the same story. So the beautiful thing about Calgary is, because the size of the market, because the market is as slow as it is right now, because the historical loss of homeownership wealth that has taken place since 2013, and the way that the Calgary Real Estate Board releases their stat data, the public can get a look into how organized real estate has conned the public over the last 40 years. Now, I want to stress to your listeners, until I gave up my real estate license, I never believed, even infinitesimally, that the Canadian public believed anything that organized real estate said. I didn't even have an iota of belief that the Canadian public, economists, banks, governments, believed organized real estate. I thought everyone knew they're simply a sales group, a group looking to make commission. They are not in the business of delivering answers to the Canadian public. So Calgary provides the listeners an opportunity to see how real estate stats can never be relied upon. In May of 2019, this May, the Calgary Board of Realtors announced that sales had increased a staggering 11.36% in the month of May. They were throwing their hats in the air, jumping up and down, smiling in the cameras, talking in the news, talking to every innocent young family out there, telling them the real estate market's gotten busier. Well, the truth of the matter was, in the month of May, there was actually 196 more sales reported in that month than the year before. 196 sales were reported more. I know what 11.36% sounds exciting, but the truth of the matter was, in that month, reported was 196 sales more. The reason I'm using report is important for your listeners to understand. So let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that those sales, the owners of those houses, had to go out and purchase their own home. Okay? So sales increased. That means there were 196 families who were homeless because they had to go out and buy another home. Well, let's say that just half of those people actually bought in May. So before the end of the month came around, they sold their house in the first half of the month. They bought their their new house in the second half of the month, and for half of those sales. Okay, so then that we can see how that would account for an extra, 95 sales in May. But that still left us a shortfall. How did they get those other 95 sales? Well, if we look to June, 1 month later, the real estate board was reporting that sales had dropped 6%. Sales were up in May, 11%. They dropped in June by 6%. I mean, folks, you really cannot make this stuff up. A quick check of the sales show, oh, wait a second. There were actually 85 fewer homes purchased in Calgary in June of 2019 versus 2018. I guess maybe those buyers, those owners in May purchased their homes more heavily in May. And thus, you had a shortfall the following month of 85 sales. It gets better, folks. It gets really better. You got to trust me here, because now we're into July.
in July, the real estate board announced sales had increased again 6%. They were 11%, up 11% in May, down 6% in June, up again in July. And guess how many sales, folks? There was a grand total of 99 more sales that took place. Well, there was 85 underreported in June, and there was 99 overreported in July. That's almost 1 for 1. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. Now, let's say that it's summertime, and the same number of buyers, they're buying on the same pattern. The owners of existing homes who have sold in July still need to buy a house. And let's say we're still showing that shortfall. In other words, if 95 more homes sold in July, we would expect to see 95 more sales in August. That is exactly what we would expect to see. And if we look at August, we see that what the real estate board reported sales were up 6% again. And guess how many sales were reported, folks? A grand total of 97 sales. So clearly, what happened was the buyers, the people who had, the extra 95 people who had sold their home in July purchased their next home in August. Folks, this is how real estate stats work. You get a boost 1 month, which carries you forward 3 to 4 months later. The public is confused in this process. Imagine being a home buyer in Calgary, being told the market had got busier by 11% in May. Oh, it had slowed down by 6% in June. We'll make up some excuse why it slowed down in June. Oh, it got busier again in July by 6%, and it got busier again in August by 6%. I mean, the home buyer's mind is boggled. But when you look at the stats that are posted on the real estate board for the Calgary real estate brokerage, you can count that 100 sales right from May, June, July, and August. So the sales increase that happened in each of those months were all predicated on the May boost in sales. Folks, when you're listening to the real estate board stats from across Canada this week, these are how the stats are read to you. This is why we tell everybody you get the W charts. Sales up 11% 1 month, down 6% the next. Up the next month by 6%, up the next by 6%, down the next. They're W charts. They're W charts because they're stats driven. They are not data driven. Housing markets don't function the way that the stats lead you to believe. All of those innocent young families listening to Calgary from May till August, okay? From May till August, just in that window. I'm not talking about the other 40 years of deception. You can see right now, if you go to their website and you look at their previous releases, you can track the 100 sales that I told you about on the show today. You can see the common sense that if Joe and Shirley sell their house in July and they don't buy another one till August, that means that extra sale is added to August sale. You're being deceived. If you're making the biggest financial decision of your life, listening to realtors, listening to real estate boards, listening to trade organizations whose sole legal obligation is to get the real estate agents a higher income level, you are making a bad decision. You need to simply be shown how the real estate market is working. You need to be told where the housing prices are going to go. You need to make a rational decision based on the information that you're given. You do not get that from any realtor in Canada because they are legally obligated through the MLS rules and regulations and their agreement to license the Canadian Real Estate Association trademarks to only talk about stats. You may think they're a nice person, and they may really well be a nice person. But if they were such wonderful people, folks, we are now May, June, July, and August. The data is sitting there staring you in the face. It only makes logical sense. You can double check it yourself. Why weren't you told that over the last 4 months?
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Ross Kay. Ross, a listener asked us, does Mr. Kay know of a service in the U.S. that provides accurate housing price forecasts as he does? My daughter lives in Denver and is looking for a house over the next year. What's happening there?
Oh, now the irony. Your listeners won't understand the irony with this because of the citing of Denver. So Denver is the birthplace of Remax. So Remax was born in Denver, Colorado. Dave and Gail Linegar founded the company there. Remax revolutionized real estate sales from a sales representative side. It basically, if you were a good enough salesperson, it was designed to allow you to run your own business under your local brokerage's banner. So for the sake of the argument, what this company did was, when my dad was selling as the number one salesperson for Royal LePage in the 1980s, his broker took 50% of the money that he made. Remax came in, and my dad was allowed to keep 100% of the money that he made. He had to rent a desk and pay for his own secretary and pay for his own overhead and everything else. He basically could run his own business. So the person who sent this is being Denver, really hits home, because of course I only ever sold under the Remax banner for the 25 years that I was in the business. Again, Remax now is no longer what it used to be. It used to be called above the crowd. They don't even use that term any longer, because when I joined, if you didn't sell 30 houses a year, you couldn't earn enough money to stay working at a Remax office. Today, if you sell 2 houses, there'll be a Remax office somewhere that will keep you. That being said, there is nothing in the United States of America similar to Ross Kay Realty Consultants or the Wealthy Homeowner. It doesn't exist. In the United States, you have CoreLogic, who bought the Case-Shiller Index, and now it's the S&P Case-Shiller Index, owned by CoreLogic. This is the long adjectives now that you have to use with that index. And it's the same con that it's always been. Now, why do I know this? Because, again, the foundational member of Organized Real Estate that used the CoreLogic software. So when CoreLogic brought their software into Canada, I was one of the first real estate agents to use it. And as our MLS used it, I was one of the leading innovators for the decade or so that I was using it. So I know exactly how CoreLogic works. The employees of CoreLogic have no idea what they're talking about. Their chief economist gives presentations to state Federal Reserves. I just can't believe that these guys are allowed to get up on stage. They're spewing the talking points of organized real estate, and they don't even know it. They really believe the new sales to listing ratio determines whether a market is a buyer's or seller's market. They really, truly believe this. Even though they don't have any data, even though they don't have one single peer-reviewed article proving that it's valid, they believe it's valid in the same way that they believe house price change can't be forecast the way that we do. No, folks. What we're doing here in Canada is not available in the USA at this time. Certain states, what we do in Canada could be done in certain states. There's probably about 22 states where our metrics could be applied. The reason why that happens is there is a certain level of data you have to have access to, and in the United States, you don't have the foolishness that has gone on in the real estate brokerage industry in Canada. So in the United States, individual brokers would never give their local MLS association the authority to do something with their data. But in Canada, the local brokers are so ignorant to the value of that data, they signed away their rights years ago. That has created the perfect storm here in Canada for real estate data. If you know how to get access to it, and you legally can get access to it, and then you have to look at StatsCan. StatsCan has a long history of reliable data that we can use with our company to cross-check, verify, double-check other signs we're seeing based on what our forecasting would suggest should be happening. We have CMHC, which, even though CMHC staff is ignorant to how a housing market works, they have still been a great collector of data over the last 40 years that we rely on heavily because we know how to read their data differently than what they themselves read it as. And then we also have a monetary system where the OSFI and the Bank of Canada has kept track of our mortgage information very reliably since the 1980s. All of that in conjunction is required in order to understand where a housing market is going. So when we forecast something, we're forecasting in a manner that allows us to cross-check what we're forecasting. And we can, every single month as we go along, we get to see how accurate our forecasts work. It also allows us to go way back from the 1980s forward and see whether our forecasting models were accurate or not. So every single month from January 1st, 1988 forward, we have cross-checked our metrics to see if we've ever had a mistake. Is it possible that we could be out in our forecast enough that we're going to hurt a consumer? In other words, do we miss a crashing housing market in our forecast? Do we miss an uptake in the housing market based on our forecast? And what I can say is when we apply the metrics that we've been using since 2015 against all of the historical data that's available, we don't make a mistake. The reason that I come on this show, Jim, and I at times sound arrogant, is because we can't be wrong. These are so black and white issues. The size of the housing market is so humongous in any province of Canada. Well, except maybe PEI or Nova Scotia, something like that. All the big provinces. That boat can't be turned in a month. All the signs that the boat is going to go left have been posted months or years in advance. Their impact on the data that Statistics Canada has, CMHC has, Bank of Canada has, the OSFI has, is already recorded a year ago, minimum a year ago, in many cases 2 years ago. The decisions that the Bank of Canada makes, that they're going to make tomorrow, are predicated using latent data that we used almost 2 years ago. Right now we're on a cycle where you're about a year and a half old, because it depends on what month of the year that we're looking at. So the Bank of Canada is going to hold with rates tomorrow. Now, personally, we would say they should hold with rates, because lowering rates does not benefit an economy from a home ownership standpoint, from a home equity standpoint, from a wealth effect standpoint. Dropping interest rates does. It's better to drop interest rates half a point, 3/4 of a point, than drop it incrementally 3 times 1/4 of a point. Now, you're not going to find that in a real estate textbook or in a government textbook, but it's the truth. So, all of the information that we have available to us that allows us to cross-check ourselves, keep ourselves in check, make sure we're not saying something that where we're wrong. Make sure we're not giving some young, innocent couple a hold call to starting out at home ownership when housing prices are rising. You want to be giving those calls to those people when it works to their advantage. We are also looking at a period of where we expect to see interest rates be dropped in this country. We expect, based on historical impact of the housing market on the economy, because the economy is a trailing indicator of where the housing market was, we expect interest rates are going to have to be dropped, regardless of what's happening in the rest of the world or in the United States of America. So the listener who's asking us, can we do this in the United States of America? Or is there another company out there? Obviously, there's not another company out there because they need our IP to be able to analyze the housing market. You need to understand when you read the Case-Shiller Index in the United States, which is paralleled in Canada by the National Bank House Price Index, they're flawed metrics. It's why in the Great Tome written by the OECD about RPPIs, they couldn't come to a conclusion that anything works. Because the reason why is they're ignorant to what they're looking at. In the United States, there are cities where we have relationships where we are able to forecast what's going on with those markets. But we do not have the infrastructure within our own company here to handle that. So we're not going to be involved in it at this stage. That said, the best place, if you're looking in the United States and America, for a place to get get an opinion, a forecast, or at least an unbiased viewpoint of the housing market, it's you contact a local appraiser. Because appraisers in the United States behave totally different than appraisers in Canada do. Appraisers in the United States are advocates. They're advisors. If you hire one, they are legally entitled to advise you about housing market. In Canada, they got to keep their mouth shut because their access to the MLS information, which they need to do appraisals for the lenders, is contingent upon them keeping their mouth shut. It's two totally different worlds. So, long story short, Denver, Colorado, we do not have enough data available to make a reliable forecast in that market. So I couldn't even tell them to contact us. It's possible in the United States. Nobody is doing it, but they would need our metrics. They would need our 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of understanding about the home trading infrastructure. And then you would need all of that other data we talked about that's available in Canada. And to be honest with you, Jim, as far as our research has shown, Canada was the only place where all of these factors, all of this data for over a long period of time has been available. It's been available there to be collected. If you knew what you're collecting, it was available to be aggregated. If you knew how to aggregate it, it was available to anyone who knew how to get it. I don't believe that exists anywhere else in the world.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim. I really appreciate it.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay from thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.